one of the things I'll talk about is at a senior leader of a state level of a business, working with him and going through and applying this time and going through it. I said to him, if we go through and do all these tasks and work this out, you should be able to find about 2 hours in your week of critical thinking. And he was gobsmacked that was even possible. And the fact that I think it was almost within 5 or 6 weeks of the habits of going through allocating his time, being clear what he was doing, measuring his time, as we were saying, he was able to create 2 hours in his calendar to block out for critical thinking. This was 2 hours for him to do nothing else but to focus on working on the business. And, he should be doing an 80-20%, 80% working on the business, 20% working in the business. And he was a long way away from that. So this gave him that ability to be able to create that time. And then in that 2 hours, what he was able to be able to do to schedule and put things into place and take ownership and work out blind spots within his team's communication or tasks that needed to be done, recruiting problems, whatever it was, it gave him a chance to sort of really work on that business. 2 hours in a week when at that time, he would be leaving work, picking his kids up from their work, going home, opening the laptop, and then doing 2 or 3 hours of work at home because he wasn't effective with the use of his time. Me personally, in my previous life, I worked on a 7-day sort of schedule. When I was working, I had 7 days. When I wasn't doing on stage and wasn't teaching, I didn't have any time of schedule. I run by the seat of my pants, which was great most of the time. Moving out of that to the space to get into a rhythm of Monday to Friday and going through and doing that, I can't tell you how profound and how effective it's been in me being able to get quality of life and being accounting for things by drilling down and time blocking and being aware of that time and going through and doing it. Because one thing that brings everyone equal is time. Elon Musk has as much time in his life as we do, and the older you get, the only thing you can't buy back is time. So take that into consideration and making sure every minute you're using is effective and getting the most out of it.
Yeah. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, it's Chantal, it's interesting. You mentioned the 15-minute time slots, and I know that, a lot of the times when people step into their work week, there's a project or something that they need to complete. And sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. And what we know is when people get a little bit overwhelmed or they get a little bit stressed, they tend to get to a point and they stop, right? And then this is the fearful spot where we go, oh, here we go, procrastination is going to kick in. So what we know is that if we actually utilize the 15-minute time slots and break things down into 15 minutes, as we're completing the first 15 minutes, it feels great, and you tick that box. And when things are being completed and you feel like you're having success and you're accomplished and you're completing things, that kicks in the motivation. So we slot the first 15 minutes slot in. There's taking action. We take the action. The motivation starts to kick in naturally, once again, as we're ticking off the boxes. So what we actually find is, even though we're breaking things down into 15-minute time slots, we're being a lot more effective and efficient with our time, and we're actually able to go in and complete a lot of those tasks and things that we may dread a little. Before you know it, an hour's already up and it's completed. So it's less overwhelm for people to step into a 15-minute time slot than what it is for them to step into something that may have been allocated for an hour or 2 hours of their time. And once again, it's feeling good, it's feeling accomplished, it's leaving the workspace knowing that things are completed. It's being able to put the boundary around those 15-minute time slots. And sometimes it can be just something as small as sending out an email to everybody in the workspace to say, hey, great to see everybody's turned up today. I've got something that's a little time sensitive this morning that I need to tend to. So, I will be unavailable between this time and this time. If you need to ask any questions, please go and see such and such. Obviously, give them the heads up that this is going to take place and make sure they've got the space to deal with that. But, once again, it's honouring, the boundaries around your time, and being able to do that is so important, because it's not only important for you to respect your time, it's important for you to respect other people's time as well. And once again, time efficiency in the workspace is the most important thing that we need to look at first and foremost as a leader, and creating those habits is really, really healthy, not only for yourself, but the team and the members that you're supporting that are looking up to you as a role model in the company.
I love that. So important. I think one of the things that you talked about there was just that boundaries principle, and it comes right back to, and also the time blocking in terms of reducing overwhelm for some people. It comes full circle to something we were talking about earlier in this episode, which was that time is a construct and everybody experiences it differently. And we have a number of different industries or niches, wherever you might be listening from, that we work with here at Life Puzzle and that the coaches, support, etc. And there's an interesting distinction between the different industries and the personalities that are attracted to those fields and how they experience time and how they look at tasks and their organization. And I think this is a consideration for everybody listening. You want to consider there are so many different elements and so many different ways to manage time. And it all comes down to, first and foremost, something Brad said, which was, what is it that you want and why do you want it? So, know what the outcome is, know what the goal is. And then we come back to, well, okay, what is my available resources to be able to contribute to that? And what would be the habits that I would develop? Simple, small, not 100 habits, but maybe 5 key habits, 3 key habits even, that if you did those every day for a small amount of time every single day, that would move the needle towards the why and the what it is that you want, and allocating that time, measuring it, putting it in the calendar, preparing whatever it is that you need. If you've got children, if you've got commitments, then whose support can you draw on and set those things up in advance so that boundary, like you mentioned, Alex, is there in the calendar, the appointment with yourself to do those things. And then moving back into, well, how do I have the commitment to continue to do those things? And that's really tied up in the emotional investment and the acquisition, the focus of that why. But coming back to the different industries, what we will see sometimes with time being a construct and people experiencing it differently in terms of how they plan, we can find people along the way that sort of go, well, an hour is a huge amount of time to commit to something and I'll get bored, right? Whereas then you have other people that will sit there and they'll say, you haven't allocated enough time for this. I can't get into it within an hour. Like I'll need 3. And so, that concept of how people experience and enjoy the time and the tasks that they're completing can vary so much. And I think you have to find what works for you. If you know that you're a person who gets distracted really quickly, then figure out what's the minimum amount of time that I can schedule. But I do want to caution everybody that's listening that every time you switch tasks, every time you move from one thing to another, particularly if it's a very different kind of task, you actually burn a lot of energy trying to get into the concentration space.